I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, I thought I knew everything about my marriage with Emily. We'd been together for 8 years, through good times and bad, and I always believed we had a solid, honest relationship. Sure, she could be a little bitchy sometimes. She had that sharp tongue and a way of twisting words that could cut like a knife. But I thought that was just her personality. I never guessed she'd cross the line like this. Things started to feel off about 3 months ago. She'd been acting more distant, spending a lot of time on her phone, and there were little things, forgotten dates, late nights that she claimed were work-related meetings, but I had a gut feeling I couldn't shake. Our usual weekend plans became sporadic, and she'd always find a way to brush off my questions with a quick, "It's nothing, just work stuff," or "You're overthinking again." That should have been my first warning sign, but I guess I was blinded by love or maybe just complacent. Then, out of nowhere, I started noticing the little things that didn't add up. Her phone started to be password protected more often, and she'd hide it whenever I came into the room. She also started leaving her purse in her car more, and her scent changed, more expensive, more alluring. One night, I caught her in a lie about where she was. She said she was at her sister, but I saw her car parked at a new beachfront property I'd recently been eyeing for a project I was conducting on desalination technology. That was strange because she had no reason to be there. I'd never even mentioned that property to her, and I wasn't even sure she knew I was considering it. The real kicker was when I started noticing her texts and emails. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I just happened to glance at her phone when she was in the shower and saw a string of messages with some guy named Josh. The tone was intimate, flirtatious, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. She was talking about meeting him at the beachfront house, saying she'd finally get some real hydration solutions from him, whatever that meant. I remembered the meetings she'd been having with some investor about desalination tech, and suddenly everything clicked. Those same lavish beachfront properties she'd been dismissing as just for the project were, in fact, her secret rendezvous spots with some guy she was cheating on me with. I felt my stomach drop. My mind was racing. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was right there. I confronted her the next morning. I laid everything out, her texts, her lies, the fact that I'd seen her car parked there, and her evasiveness. Her reaction. She called me paranoid, said I was overreacting, that I was just jealous or insecure. Then she threw a fit, calling me crazy and possessive, accusing me of trying to control her life. She told me I was imagining things, that Josh was just a business contact, that she was only meeting him to talk about the desalination project, that she was not some cheating little slut. I felt like I was in a nightmare. Everything I thought I knew about her was crumbling right in front of me. Honestly, I don't even remember how I managed to stay calm during that confrontation. Inside, I was boiling with rage, betrayal, and heartbreak. It was like my entire world was shattering. I kept asking myself, how did I miss the signs? How could she lie so convincingly? I felt this intense mix of anger and sadness, anger that she'd betrayed me after all these years, and sadness that our marriage might be over. I wanted to lash out, to scream at her, but I held back. I needed to think, to plan. I knew this wasn't just a fling. It was something deeper, something rotten. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying her words, her lies, the sight of her with Josh, the way she'd been so dismissive when I confronted her. I felt so stupid for not noticing sooner. The next day I started to dig deeper, checking her emails again, trying to find some thread I could follow. I also reached out to some of her friends, trying to piece together what I didn't know. I was already planning my next move, but I didn't tell anyone. It was just me, trying to piece together the wreckage of my marriage and determine what the hell to do next. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept spinning in circles, replaying everything I'd uncovered about Emily and her secret meetings. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, betrayed, crushed, furious, and utterly lost all at once. I kept asking myself how I'd missed the signs, how I hadn't seen the lies coming, and why she thought she could get away with it. I knew deep down that I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. If she was cheating on me with Josh, some guy she'd been meeting at beachfront properties I was evaluating for our desalination project, then everything was over. Or at least it should be. But I wasn't just going to confront her again and get a string of lame excuses. No, I needed proof. I needed to see more. So I started digging into her emails and bank accounts, trying to find any more evidence of her double life. I even hacked into her phone when she was out, which felt dirty, but I was desperate. And sure enough, I found a series of receipts, hotel charges, restaurant bills, even a couple of hotel key cards paid for in cash, things that confirmed she was sneaking out, meeting him somewhere private and away from me. I couldn't believe this was happening. I'd always thought she was a strong woman, maybe bitchy at times, but loyal. Turns out she'd been hiding all of this right under my nose. The worst part, she'd lied to my face so convincingly about everything, about her meetings, her whereabouts, and I'd trusted her. That kind of betrayal cuts deep. I started feeling a mix of anger and despair. I wondered how long she'd been doing this, how many times she'd lied, and whether I was just another fool who'd been played. The next day, I decided I had to confront her again, but this time with more evidence. I sat her down after work, ready to ask the questions that had been burning inside me since I discovered her affair. She looked irritated as I began, trying to brush me off, but I pulled out the receipts, the emails, the texts. I laid it all out, every little detail I had uncovered. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she started to lie again, flipping the script, calling me paranoid and insecure. She said I was crazy for doubting her, that Josh was just a business contact, that those beachfront meetups were just work-related and nothing more. She insisted she wasn't cheating, that I was just imagining things, that I was jealous and possessive. I could feel my blood boiling. How could she deny it after all the evidence I'd shown her? She was so good at playing the victim, twisting her words, making herself look innocent. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw through her lies. That's when I realized I had to make a decision. I couldn't stay married to someone who lied, cheated, and manipulated me like this. The rage inside me was starting to take over. I wanted to shake her, to scream at her, but instead I just sat there seething, trying to keep my composure. The emotional toll was insane. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and heartbroken all at once. I'd always thought we had a future, a life together, maybe not perfect, but real. And now I was facing the brutal reality that she'd been unfaithful, that she'd been hiding a secret life behind my back. I kept asking myself, how did I not see it coming? Why did I trust her so much? How could she do this to me? It felt like my entire world was crashing down, and I was just standing in the rubble, trying to piece together what was left of it. As I left that confrontation, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. The trust was broken beyond repair in my eyes. I felt a strange mixture of relief and devastation. Relief because I finally knew the truth, and devastation because that truth shattered everything I believed in. I spent the rest of the night battling my emotions, trying to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to walk away immediately, forget her, and start fresh. But another part, the part that still loved her, wanted to fix things, to believe there was some way back. But I knew deep down that trust once broken like this doesn't just come back. Not really. That night I promised myself I'd think long and hard about what was best for me, whether to forgive, to fight for this marriage, or to just walk away and leave her behind. The days that followed were a blur of confusion, rage, and a strange sort of numbness. I kept revisiting everything I'd uncovered, trying to make sense of how Emily could do this to me. It wasn't just the affair itself. It was the lies, the deceit, the way she'd manipulate the truth to make herself look innocent. I started questioning every moment of our marriage, every memory we'd shared, wondering how much of it was real and how much was just her lies. I also started to think about my options. See, I had two choices. I could just cut my losses, kick her out, and move on, or I could try to confront her again, see if she'd be honest, and maybe salvage what was left. Honestly, I was leaning toward just walking away. But I also felt this strange urge to confront her one last time, to make her face what she'd done and see if she'd admit the truth without the lies. I wanted her to see how much she'd hurt me, how betrayed I felt. One afternoon, I decided to go back to her, but this time I had a plan. I wanted her to admit everything. No more denials, no more excuses. I wanted her to look me in the eye and tell me what she'd been doing behind my back, so I set the stage carefully. I asked her to meet me at the house after work, and I told her I had something important to discuss. She looked annoyed, like I was bothering her, but she agreed. Classic Emily, she always played the victim, like I was the one making her life difficult. When she got home, I was waiting and I didn't hold back. I laid out my evidence, everything I'd found, all the receipts, the texts, the emails. I watched her face as I did it, her sneer slowly fading into anger, then into frustration. She tried to deny it all at first, but I wasn't having it. I pushed her harder, demanding the truth. That's when she snapped. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, saying I was crazy for accusing her of such things. She shouted that I was just jealous because she was more successful than me, more confident, and that I didn't understand her. But I wasn't buying her lies this time. I told her she was a liar, a manipulator, someone I couldn't trust anymore. She kept insisting she loved me, that she'd never cheat, that Josh was just some business contact, and that I was reading too much into it. Her voice was shrill, her eyes filled with anger. She looked like she was losing control. That's when I knew this was the end of the line. I told her I was done, that I couldn't stay with someone who lied to my face, who made a fool out of me. The worst part was the way she looked at me, like I was the bad guy for catching her. She called me insecure, said I was jealous of her success, that I was holding her back. She even tried to manipulate me into feeling guilty, saying I was ruining our marriage over some stupid affair. But I wasn't going to let her do that anymore. I told her I was done trying to fix this, that I was going to leave and start over. That was my decision. I couldn't stay with someone who turned out to be so fundamentally dishonest. That night, I packed a bag and left. I didn't want to stay in that house, in that marriage, knowing what she'd done. I felt a strange mix of relief and heartbreak as I walked out the door. I knew I'd never forget this betrayal, but I also knew I had to protect myself from her lies and manipulation. The next few days were the hardest. I kept replaying everything, wondering if I'd made the right choice. Did I leave behind someone I loved? Or was I finally freeing myself from a relationship built on lies? But one thing was clear: I wasn't going to be a fool again. I'd learned that trusting blindly was a mistake, especially with someone like Emily. She was manipulative, bitchy, and totally unreliable when it came to honesty. I was hurt, yes, but I also felt a strange sense of empowerment, like I finally took control of my life. I knew this wasn't the end of my story, but for now, it was the beginning of a new chapter where I put myself first. And honestly, that felt like a small victory in the middle of a really shitty situation. After I left Emily that night, everything felt like chaos. I stayed with a friend for a couple of days just to get some space, trying to process what had happened. The house felt colder, emptier without her there. I kept thinking about all the little things I missed: her sharp tongue, her bitchy attitude, her lies, and I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. I'd never imagined I'd be in this situation, and honestly, it hurt more than I expected. But what hurt even more was realizing how much I'd trusted her. I had genuinely believed we had something real, that she loved me. That trust was shattered, and now I was left picking up the pieces. Still, I knew I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had to decide what was next, how to move forward. My mind kept circling around the same questions. Do I try to save this marriage? Do I cut her out completely? Or do I just accept what happened and move on? I started reaching out to some friends, trying to get advice, but honestly, most of them just told me to cut my losses. That Emily was manipulative and not worth fighting for. Maybe they were right. Maybe I should just forget her and start fresh. But part of me was still holding on to hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I could get her to admit everything and see if there was any way to salvage what was left. I wasn't naive enough to think that would be easy, especially with how she'd lied to my face, but I needed closure. So I made plans to confront her. Again, this time with a clearer mind and a little more patience. I wanted her to admit she'd been unfaithful. No more denials, no more lies. I told myself I'd be calm and controlled, no matter what she said. I knew her well enough to understand that Emily was good at twisting the truth, making herself look innocent even when she was caught red-handed. That's why I had to be ready for anything. I knew she'd try to manipulate me, to turn things around, but I was determined to stay firm. When I saw her again, she was furious. She accused me of being obsessive and crazy, said I was ruining her life over some stupid affair. She insisted she loved me, said I was just jealous and insecure, but I wasn't buying her crocodile tears anymore. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her I knew everything: the texts, the hotel bills, the secret meetings at beachfront properties. I told her I didn't believe a word she said anymore. I wanted her to be honest with me, to finally own up to what she did. And then she broke down, not crying, just losing her temper. She started yelling, calling me all sorts of names: possessive, jealous, controlling. She called me paranoid and accused me of trying to ruin her life. Her face was twisted with anger and hatred. It was almost like I was dealing with someone completely different from the woman I'd married. I saw her for what she really was: selfish, manipulative, willing to lie and cheat to get her way. In that moment, I realized I couldn't keep pretending this was just a misunderstanding or some innocent mistake. No, she had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I told her I was done, that I was leaving for good. I told her I didn't want to see her again, that I was going to start over without her. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, admitting that it was over, that I was walking away from someone I still loved but couldn't trust anymore. I wanted her to understand that I deserved better, that I wouldn't let her lie and manipulate me any longer. That night I packed up my things and moved out. It was a brutal decision, but I knew it was necessary. I couldn't live in a lie, in a marriage built on betrayal. I felt like I was losing a part of myself, but at the same time I was gaining clarity. I had to rebuild my life from scratch, piece by piece. I knew I'd be okay, eventually. Right now, though, I was just trying to breathe, trying to stay strong. I'd been fooled once, but I wasn't going to let her take everything from me. Not again. Moving out was the hardest thing I've ever done. As I loaded my car with what mattered most, some clothes, a few personal things, I felt a strange mix of relief and despair. Relief because I was finally free from her lies, her manipulation, her betrayal. But despair because I was leaving behind the life I thought we had, the woman I loved, the future I'd envisioned. It was like I was losing a part of myself, and I couldn't tell if I'd ever find it again. In the days that followed, I tried to keep busy. I threw myself into work, threw myself into friendships, anything to keep my mind off her. But the truth was, I couldn't escape the pain. The memories kept flooding in, the good times, the fights, the moments I thought she loved me. And then the betrayal came crashing down all over again. I kept asking myself how I'd missed the signs, how I'd been so blind to her lies. I felt so stupid, so naive. I'd trusted her with everything. One night I decided I needed closure. I reached out to her, telling her I wanted to talk, to understand why she did what she did. She agreed to meet, but her attitude was already defensive. She was trying to spin it all, claiming she lost herself, that she didn't mean to cheat, that it was just a stupid mistake she couldn't control. I listened, but I didn't believe her. Not anymore. I looked at her and saw someone I didn't recognize. She was bitchy, manipulative, and totally self-absorbed. The woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone who cared only about herself. I told her I didn't want to hear any more lies, that I knew she'd been unfaithful and that I was done playing her game. I told her I was hurt, angry, and that I'd never trusted her again. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was overreacting and that I was jealous of success, her independence, her life. But I couldn't be fooled anymore. Her words were empty, her tears fake. I saw through her cracks and knew I had to cut her out for good. Over the next few weeks, I focused on healing. I sought therapy, talked to friends, and tried to rebuild my confidence. But every now and then, I'd get hit by waves of regret, thinking about what we lost, what I could have done differently. Still, I knew that staying in a marriage where I was constantly lied to wasn't an option. I had to move on, no matter how painful it was. I had to learn to trust myself again, to understand that I deserved honesty and respect, not betrayal and manipulation. This whole experience has taught me one thing: never ignore your gut. I kept sensing something was wrong, but I ignored the little signs. I thought her bitchy attitude was just her personality. I thought her excuses were sincere. But in the end, her lies proved everything. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. I don't regret leaving her, even if it hurts like hell. I believe someday I'll find someone who respects me, who's honest and real. But for now, I'm just trying to rebuild my life and get past the hurt. Honestly, if I could give any advice to someone going through this, it would be, trust yourself. Don't ignore the warning signs. And don't let anyone lie to you, no matter how bitchy or convincing they are. You deserve better than betrayal. I'm still healing, but I'm stronger now, and I know I'll come out of this okay. Just gotta keep going. Looking back on everything, I realize how much this experience has changed me, though not in the way I expected. I used to be naive, trusting blindly, thinking that love and honesty were enough to hold a marriage together. Now I see that trust has to be earned and maintained every day. It's a fragile thing, and once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to fix. That lesson cost me a lot, but it's one I won't forget. After everything, I've come to understand that sometimes the only way to truly move forward is to cut the poison out. Emily was someone I thought I knew, but she turned out to be someone I couldn't trust. Her manipulations, her lies, her bitchy attitude, they all added up to one thing. She wasn't the woman I believed she was. That realization was brutal, but it also set me free. I'm no longer living in the shadow of her deception. I'm finally starting to rebuild my life, piece by piece. I've learned to prioritize myself. I focus on my career, my friends, and my own happiness. I don't have space in my life for someone who lies and manipulates, someone who disrespects the very foundation of a relationship. It's not easy, and there are days when I feel the weight of everything I lost. But I remind myself that I deserve honesty, respect, and loyalty. And I will find that again in time. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how bitchy or convincing the other person might seem. If they're lying, hiding things, or acting suspiciously, it's probably not just work stress or nothing. Pay attention to the small red flags. They often turn into bigger problems if you let them slide. Most importantly, don't be afraid to walk away if that's what you need. Staying in a relationship built on lies only prolongs the pain. Find the strength to cut ties and heal. It might hurt now, but in the long run, it's the only way to truly move forward. I'm living proof that even after betrayal, you can come out stronger. It's a hard lesson, but it's also a necessary one. Now, I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'll be okay. I've learned to trust myself again, and I've learned that I deserve more than someone who takes me for granted. Life goes on, and so will I, better, wiser, and more cautious than ever. And if I can do it, so can anyone else going through something similar. Just remember, your happiness is worth more than any betrayal, and your strength can get you through even the darkest times.